Good evening and welcome to Chasing the Facts. I'm your host, Sam Chase, and with us this evening is Joe Reddy, who is a candidate for the office of Register of Deeds, North Middlesex. Did I say that correctly?
Yeah, that's correct. So,
okay.
I am Joe Reddy. I am running for the Northern Middlesex Register of Deeds. I'm very excited about the opportunity, so thank you for having me on the show, Sam.
Very welcome. So I think what I'd like to do is, as we always do, and you've been on the show once before, if you could just give us a very brief biographical snapshot, and then we'll get into the discussion and we'll talk a little bit about the office itself and then your campaign. So turn it back to you.
So for most people that live in Chelmsford, they probably have seen me either through telemedia or through some sort of town event. I've also, run for town offices in the past. So certainly we've been in Chelmsford a long time. I'm very interested in running for the Northern Middlesex Register of Deeds, which actually encompasses 10 communities, all surrounding essentially Lowell. So you have, Lowell, Chelmsford, Westford, Billerica, Carlisle, Wilmington, Tewksbury, Dracut, Tingsboro, and Dunstable. Those communities are essentially what the registry serves. Most people don't really know much about the Registry of Deeds and what it does, but it's really,
you're going to tell us right now.
I'm going to tell you right now, yeah. It's a place where land records are basically maintained, okay? And as somebody that's been in real estate for over a decade as a real estate broker, I have a lot of interaction with the registry. I consider myself to be a super user, constantly searching through various documents that have been recorded. But my passion for the registry goes back to being a young man. I actually, when I was in high school, had the opportunity to work as an intern at various law firms. And there I was able to record deeds and mortgages and other instruments for attorneys, at various registries throughout the state. I then later went off to start my own company called Horizon Mortgage Recording, which essentially was a business that was a courier service. I would pick up documents from attorneys, and then I would just go stand in line and record them all day.
Back in the days before you could do it online.
Yeah, so this was before the advent of e-recording. And then essentially Dick Howe Jr., who is the current register that's now retiring, he was the person that implemented electronic recording here in the Northern Middlesex County. So, it really took the registry from, a place where people would go, they'd look through books, to somewhere where they're now able to search online, a place where it's a little more efficient as a result of, e-recording and all the things they have. But, with that being said, there's still much that the registry can do to improve on its services. There's things that it can do to improve on its efficiencies. And that is something that I'd like to bring, my service to try to make that happen. So you asked me a little bit about my background. One of the reasons why I really wanted to run for this job was I have a very unique background that I think fits well for being the Register of Deeds. I worked at Harvard Law School. I ran their career services office under the Assistant Dean of Career Services. I've managed administrative staff. I've run administrative offices. I worked at Suffolk Law School. I worked in their registrar's office. I've had experience, doing customer service there. I've implemented technology very much under the same time frame that Dick Howe Jr. did at Suffolk Law School, implementing their first online applications back in a time when everybody used to send in paper applications. So, I have a good background in how I want to accomplish the things that I want to do. But more importantly, I also have a background as an entrepreneur, somebody that can look at the big picture, look at new and exciting opportunities, and try to build a pathway to make those happen. So, I'm looking forward to, hopefully bringing that experience to the registry. I think I work well with people that do interface with the registry, which typically ends up being attorneys and people that are doing title searches, real estate brokers. I have a good background working with them, and I try to, reach out and find out how can we make things better, not only for them, but also for the general public. So.
Well, I think that's certainly, I think your background is very consistent with the, the potential office that you're seeking. And certainly, I think you have to credit Dick Howe with actually bringing the registry into the 21st century, I guess, for lack of a better term, because certainly I can remember the days when everything was a paper transaction, and you know, some days you'd go into the registry, you'd stand in line for a long time, okay? It's like going to the Registry of Motor Vehicles, I guess. And he really, I think, revolutionized that. So it's certainly a much more pleasant experience. I know as an assessor here in town, you know, we get information instantaneously when deeds are recorded, and that makes a huge difference, you know, for everybody.
It does.
So that's great. So, I mean, a lot of that spade work has already been done, but obviously you have ideas to, as they say, take it to the next level, for lack of a better term.
So a good example, so the assessor's office, one of the things I'd like to do is, that's a great implementation of data coming over, but it could go even a step further, you know, maybe working with those vision databases to see if maybe we can get deeds, you know, so that you can click on them as a link, have them come up right then and there versus just book and page references. Working with GIS technology, so somebody that's on looking at a particular parcel can actually also reference back to specific deeds and mortgages that might be on it. You know, if you've ever been in a situation where maybe an abutters notice goes out and you're trying to figure out, okay, who actually owns this property, you know, it might be beneficial to the community to be able to get instant access to those documents.
Oh, I don't think there's any, that sounds like a great idea. I know as an assessor in town, and very often I get questions, and in the old days, you know, we had access through the internet and everything. I would go to the assessor's database. Now, I go to the GIS and I click on the parcel.
Correct.
And I can, like you say, it feeds to everything else, but I start off with an actual visual of the property, which is terrific because it kind of situates the thing in your mind, and now you know exactly what you're looking at. So, yeah, that would be fantastic if you know, those kinds of changes could be implemented. So
another big thing that
you have, as you said, you have the technology background as well. I
right.
mean, you understand how that works.
You do have to recognize that.
Yeah.
You know, you are working with some legacy data. You know, you do have systems that may not integrate well with each other, right? So, you know, these are all factors that you have to consider as you start to map out a new future for the registry. But at the same time, you shouldn't let any of those things encumber you to say, okay, we're not going to try this. You know, my ideas are always, okay, this is what the end vision should look like. How can we work to get there? And it takes sitting down, probably a collaborative amongst registrars across the state, working with the Secretary of State, because a lot of the funding comes, you know, through that office, and there's other features that they're responsible for as well. So, you know, it's really kind of bringing all of those players together and really making something that can be cohesive for all registries across the state, not just the Northern Middlesex, but it's good to have a good leader. I think Dick Howe Jr., when he first ran, he was that leader. He was the person that really carried the torch for, you know, online recording, and so it's really made a huge difference. He's also, if you look at what Dick's done in the past, and he calls himself a historian, and I think that that's very important. The registry.
I also think it's very accurate.
It is very accurate, but it's a great resource for going back and looking at, you know, historical records, people that have owned property in the past. I've talked on other shows about the fact that we have historic properties in various towns, and one of the things that makes them historic is the fact that they had people that lived in them that had historic backgrounds. Take John Adams and others that, you know, have been founding fathers of this area. You know, you can go back and research them all the way back in the registry if you're so inclined. And so, you know, this is important for, you know, keeping this information for the annals of time and really being able to build out a historic, you know, reference point. So, you know, that's what makes the registry really a special place and something that, you know, needs to obviously be protected. You know, also as part of like one of the things I'd like to implement, if you ever go on the registry website, there are still many documents that are unindexed that need to be, you know, culled through and you know, put in properly. So, you know, some of that's just assigning people to make sure that we get those projects done, you know, while also making sure that the registry is running efficiently day to day for people. So
So your assessment of the current operation, obviously Dick Howe is in charge, and he's got a terrific reputation for running a good ship. But your campaign isn't based on any material deficiencies or weaknesses that you see in the office.
No, not particularly. I mean, I know, one of my opponents works in the office, and she'll say, oh, I've worked in the registry. But I think having been a super user that uses the registry, I come at it with a different approach. And sometimes if you've been in the office for too long, you kind of see things the same way. And, Dick did a fantastic job, but, there's a point where sometimes you just get used to the status quo.
And there's a burnout factor too.
Yeah, and you know what, I look at Dick, and this is something I want to give him a lot of credit for, is he had to manage the registry during our COVID shutdown at a time when real estate was actually accelerating. Most people were out there trying to swap homes. They want to get out of the city, get into the suburbs. And so you had a tremendous number of documents that still needed to be recorded. He couldn't just shut down just because, the pandemic had hit. So they really had to get creative on how to make that all work. That's a very stressful thing to do. And I think that, takes a toll. So I give him a lot of credit. I think he should be given accolades for that. So that's something else that I, was thinking about the other day.
Yeah, that's good. I'm very happy with the placement of the office in the new courthouse. It's on the first floor.
Yeah, right there at 370 Jackson Street.
You just walk right in, and it's an improvement over the other situation. And the last transaction I had was fairly recent. I had to have something recorded, and I was in and out of that office in 5 minutes.
Well, part of that is you don't have the same lines that you once had.
Absolutely.
Right? Typically, in a given year, you'll have about 75,000 documents recorded at the registry, and it varies. It'll probably go down this year just because, with interest rates having rise, you're not going to have as many refinances and things of that nature. So there won't be as many documents. Plus, sales in general are lower, even though prices are stable. You don't have as many home sales, right? So that's just not as many deeds to record, right? So documents will definitely be down a little bit, but the registry is an important function for the state. The registry brings in somewhere between $18 and $24 million from excise stamp tax, revenue, and it collects that revenue. So when you're buying a house and you're selling it, you got to pay a stamp tax, and that's usually $4.56 per thousand, and that adds up, and that's one of the key functions on top of all the recording fees, that the registry derives as well. So, it's definitely an important office. It has a budget somewhere in the $1.3 million range for 2024. A lot of that is made up of staff, salaries, and then also,
that doesn't sound like a lot of money for the scope of services that the office provides.
No,
is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I think that's a completely fair statement.
Yeah, okay.
I think it's one of those offices that, because it's been so well run by Dick over the past 30 years, you haven't really thought about it. But, I look at the back end of things. If you ever, go into an attorney's office and they're recording something, they may be using, Simple File, which is like a, online, recording with the registry. But it's great. The registry can go in, take the money straight out of the attorney's, IOLTA accounts, and then have it right there for the state to put into its coffers. So, that quick access, you're not necessarily dealing with checks and trying to process all of that works out great for the state.
Well, I think that's all a very good background. I want to ask you a couple of questions, though, specifically about your timing and everything. So you've been, at least from my perspective, you've been a pretty successful real estate broker in the town. You had your business for a while. I think now you're affiliated with Century 21.
Yeah, so I work as an associate broker at Century 21. I sold Ready Real Estate to Shannon Anderson, who's a phenomenal broker. Partly because I was looking to make this run for Register of Deeds.
Okay, well, see, you answered the question part of the question I was going to ask.
You really can't do both. You can't run, a company the way I was and also run a registry. It's just impossible.
Oh, yeah.
And so, here, this has really given me an opportunity to go after something that, I've been looking to do for a long time.
Okay, so this has been a longer term vision.
Correct.
Of yours. All right. Okay.
So I had actually sat down with Dick Howe Jr. back in 2018 and told him, I really was interested in running for the Registry of Deeds. I spent a long time talking to him about the registry and, all the things that he had been doing. And he had indicated to me at that time, this is probably my last, my last term. So, I've been kind of looking at that. It's something that I've talked, now my father's obviously passed away, but my father and I used to talk about, this was the one position I've always wanted to do. But quite frankly, I wasn't as qualified then as I am now. I can't think of a more perfect time in my life where, I've had many successes. I've done well as a business owner, and now this is really an opportunity to do something that very much interests me. Maybe not everyone. Everyone has different, things that they like to do. But this is an opportunity to do something that's of interest to me, to give some public service back. And so I want to obviously make this run and see what I can do to help.
Well, I think that this is all very important information for the voters to understand about your candidacy, because so often we have people that just jump into a political office. And even though this is really an administrative function that has to be done, it is obviously a political office. And I can think of times, well, maybe not so much in the north, but in the southern half of the district, there were not too long ago, we had somebody that was elected that had absolutely no background, and I don't want to cast any aspersions on, I forget the woman's name, but I mean, she had no background at all, hadn't worked in the registry, hadn't done anything, but she got elected, and I guess didn't do too badly from what I understand. But really, I think it's in the interest of all of us as voters, if we have people who have qualifications that are directly related to the position that they bring, and then somebody who really has taken the time, and you're telling me something tonight that I really didn't know, so I'm glad we're talking about this. I mean, you've been thinking about this for a long time, and you have mentally prepared yourself for the run.
I have.
Okay.
So it's twofold, right?
Yeah.
One is, are you qualified? And two, are you willing to go through all of the campaigning efforts that it takes to win the seat?
Yes.
And I think there's a vast difference between whether you're qualified to do the job and whether you can win the office, right? And so, I have to balance both here. If you go to my website, votejoeready.com, I have on there a testimonial from my former boss at Harvard Law School, because I felt it was important that, as I run for this position, very much as if I were to be applying for any job anywhere, providing references of my past work experience is very important.
It's a good. I did look at your website, and it's very well done, and people should look at that, because it gives, in addition to what Joe just said, it gives a chronology of Joe's experience, business experience, and things that he's already talked about. So you can get a pretty good idea, good flavor of what you're looking at there. So.
And I honestly, I hope everyone, considers voting for me at some point. This is not a job where, we're really talking about policies and how you feel about, various topics, right? So, whether
it's like assessing. It's pretty much governed by law, state law, regulations, and everything. You don't have a whole heck of a lot of discretion and latitude. There's a defined job, defined set of criteria that you have to follow. So.
Right. So I'm a Democrat. I'll be running in the Democratic primary, but ultimately,
you're not taking much of a chance by making that declaration in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, are you?
No, but I've been a lifelong Democrat my whole life. So that's the party that I'll be running in. Yeah. But those policies, decisions, and how people feel at those levels doesn't really translate to this job.
So for the audience here, let's talk a little bit about the political aspect. And I will say before we get into that, you've heard Joe, you've heard his experience, but you also have the political experience. So this isn't something that's going to be new to you to go through this political process. So the first thing we have to do is we have to run in a primary. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so right now, actually what I'm waiting for are papers to become available on February 13th, at which time I'll start getting signatures.
How many signatures do you need?
You actually need to get 1,000 signatures.
Really?
Yeah.
So
1,000 verified signatures.
In the town, we have to get 50. Okay, so at this level, it's 1,000 signatures.
Yeah, it's quite the operation. Now, you know, I've done this before in my past. When I lived in Boston, I was passionate about running for city
I
council.
remember that, yes.
And I had a platform that I thought was great, and I really wanted to bring that forward. That required 1,500 signatures to get on the ballot, and I remember standing out at street corners and at grocery stores and every place I could find to try to get to voters, and it took me weeks to make that happen. The good news now is I have, you know, a lot of friends and family in this area that can help me out.
I don't think you'll have any trouble with the signatures.
So trying to accumulate those signatures is not going to be as hard as it has been in the past, but it did make me appreciate the effort that you have to go through to actually get on the ballot. That people have to believe in you enough, and you have to at least be willing to go out and talk to people, tell them what it is that you're looking to do, so that they'll give you a signature.
And I think it's important, you know, at this level anyway, that when you're doing that, obviously you have proxies getting you signatures. It's 1,000 and so forth. But I think it's very important for the candidate himself to get out there with the papers, and again, it gives you a chance to talk to the prospective voters and so forth.
And you learn a lot. I mean, one of the things that I'm really going to bring to this position is the educational component of it. If you talk to many people, they really don't know much about what a register does, and they don't know much about the Registry of Deeds. You know, and quite frankly, you get a lot of people that don't even see their deed, because a lot of times the deed is actually signed over from the seller. The buyer doesn't actually sign it. And so, you know, it's years later before they actually even see what it looks like. One of the things that I would really like to cut down on is, I tell all the people that I've sold property to, you're going to get in the mail, it's going to be this paper that says that you should be buying your deed from them, and they'll send you a copy of it for $10.
Oh boy.
You know, and so if you go on the Secretary of State's website, I think they say it best. Like, there's these companies out there that are trying to sell you these services that are really at an inflated rate. You know, you can get your deed for free online, or you can even mail in and get it, you know, from the registry. So there's really no reason for you to be paying for this. And it's important to notify the general public that this service exists, so that they're not being taken advantage of as a result. Those are the types of things that you want to bring out to the public. Dick Howe Jr. did a great job of having a blog. I mean, he's got hundreds and hundreds of articles. If you want to know anything about the registry, you can go on the lowelldeeds.com website, go search his blog, and you can find out, you know, just a treasure trove of information.
Oh, yes, Dick is a very interesting guy, and as we said before, I think he's a very good amateur historian, okay? So he has brought a lot to the office. So we do the primary, so what is the timing now of the primary? So you've got your papers.
The primary is going to be on September 3rd.
Okay.
So once the papers have been submitted and certified.
And how long do you have to get your papers in? What's the window there?
Roughly till about April.
Oh, well, that's
yeah. There's ample time to do it. You know, part of it though is, whenever you run for public office, you know, it's important that you really talk about this with your family and friends.
Oh, big time.
It's a very difficult endeavor. Time-wise, it takes a lot of time commitment to make it happen. And so, especially when you start multiplying it over 10 communities, you know, there's a lot of different events that you need to be at. People want you to be present for all of those events. So you have to have a lot of time management skills as a result.
If your any political office above town meeting rep, if your family isn't on board, don't do it.
Yeah, I said to, I made several calls in November when Dick had announced that he was going to be retiring. And they said, well, you got to come out and announce today. And I said, well, I've got certain people that I need to talk to, and I need to, you know, not necessarily get their support, but, you know, for instance, my wife, Amy, I love her to death.
Pretty important.
It's important. We have 4 children. You know, is this going to be something that you know, she's okay with? And more importantly, I'm very happy that she recognizes, you know, you've talked about this for a long time. I know this was a dream. This was a vision of yours to run for this position. So she's 110% on board. It starts right there at the core. You know, my marriage is the most important thing that I have. My children, very important, and we kind of work from there. So.
Yeah. I think that's exactly the right attitude and perspective to have. So now we get into the primary. So I know of one challenger. Are there others?
Right now I have 2 challengers.
Okay.
One is Karen Casella. She works in the registry. And then the other is Sakari Chow. He's
Oh,
city councilor out of Lowell,
former mayor.
former mayor.
Right.
So, it's not going to be an easy race by any means, and it's going to be important that, I get out there and I knock on doors and I make phone calls and I, go to the events that need to happen. But I do think that I do think my background is a better fit for the position, truthfully. But it'll be up to the voters to make that decision in the end.
And certainly Sakari is well known in Lowell, but if you look at the election statistics coming out of the city of Lowell, their turnouts are very low. Okay, in your case, even though in the town elections our turnouts are low, but because you're a Chelmsford resident, you're going to get a lot of Chelmsford support. I think that's going to help you. So you get through the primary, all right, and Joe Reddy is victorious in the primary. Is that because of our political situation in the state? Is that almost tantamount to you've won? Because do you anticipate any Republican opposition in the general election?
You know what? I don't think it. My personal feeling is I'm going for everyone's vote, regardless of what your party is, whatever your affiliation is. And if I were to be the nominee for the Democratic Party, at that point I would still go out there and I would treat every voter the same, whether or not they were, Democrat or Republican. I think I've tried to bridge the gap on both sides on many occasions, especially having, run for town offices. Not everybody is registered to a party. I mean, you have a lot of unenrolled people here.
In Massachusetts, yeah.
Yeah, you have a lot of independents, and so it's important that you don't just take for granted their vote. I mean, they're going to show up and they're going to be heard on election day. So, my feeling is I'm out to win it every step of the way, whether that's the party nomination or whether that's the general election. I won't treat it really any differently. If I do have an opponent, I'm going to have to measure what I can bring to the office versus what they bring to the office, and try to demonstrate my abilities to the voters at that point.
I think that's a very important perspective to have. So, the more you can convince people that you're really serious about wanting the job, and I think I've always said the two basic characteristics of running for, first of all, you have to like people. If you don't like people, you don't belong in politics, okay? And secondly, you have to campaign as if you are in a desperate fight, even if you think you aren't.
True.
Okay, and you have to show people you really want the job, and that's just my personal philosophy anyway.
I really have only ever run for things if I have a passion, if I have something specific that I feel, should be implemented. I mean, I came about 100 votes short to Bob Joyce in that select board race back in 2014, but my main platform...
Still scratching my head on that one.
My main platform at that time was full-day kindergarten, and
I remember.
To this day, it's been implemented. I've learned that even just my involvement in this race, win or lose, I think the registry will end up in a better place because of it.
Well, that's a good attitude. I think that's right. And just as we said before, the mere fact that part of your campaign is going to be an educational campaign, I think everybody will benefit from that.
Yeah, it's important. I mean, one thing we didn't even talk about, is homestead. Many people don't know, but they can protect some of the value of their house just simply by recording a homestead, should that be their primary residence.
And that comes under the category of a no-brainer, really. So anyway, we've talked about a number of things, and we're almost out of time, Joe. So take the last 45 seconds or so. And as your father used to say, ask for the vote.
I'm Joe Reddy. I asked for your vote on Election Day, which is September 3rd. Go to votejoereddy.com. You can get more information about my campaign. Please follow me. We'll be putting up all sorts of new information each week. And you can also go to Facebook, votejoereddy.com, or facebook.com/votejoereddy, and get more information that way. So,
yep, I've seen a couple of your Facebook postings. It's very effective. It carries forth your colors here and your theme and everything. So I think we're looking forward very much to this campaign, and this may be one of the better campaigns. Who thought about it?
This might be
Register of Deeds.
This might be the only race.
There you go. Absolutely.
Well, hopefully we'll drive people out and hopefully make it
wonderful.
exciting.
Joe, thank you. We're out of time.